Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamenenchev with Tom Castleman. We have another great show for you guys today. NBA Finals, even at a game apiece. Some stars are dominating, others not so much. Role players, we'll talk about how those guys are doing, who's going to keep being great, who's going to cool off. We got some NHL playoffs on the docket, MLB contender, pretender. We'll even talk a little bit of tennis. We'll hit on some football, some soccer. We're going to take you around the whole world of sports. Tom, I cannot wait to get started. How about you?
I'm feeling the exact same way. It's been a minute since we talked baseball, last week being Memorial Day. I mean, obviously we were doing a lot of NBA preview then, but this is right around the time of year that we start looking at teams' records and saying, okay, roughly a third of the way through the season, this is who some teams are. You know, we're going to talk about both full teams as well as some individual players if they're going to be able to maintain their torrid pace towards some career-looking years as of right now. But one thing for which I cannot wait is NBA Finals Game 3. We had Game 1 on a Thursday. Then we waited till a Sunday. And now we're waiting until a Wednesday. So plenty of time for everyone to catch their breaths, both on the court and off. And of course, we're going to be starting with, as you said, a game apiece. Both games decided kind of in similar fashion to how we've seen the rest of the playoffs going. In the individual game, the end score not necessarily all that close, even though 1-1 obviously is as close as it gets after game 2 in a series. So Boston withstanding the quintessential, basically what the Warriors have been, not just this season, but through like the entirety of the Steph, Clay, Draymond, Steve Kerr era of dominating third quarters. Boston hit with that really hard in game 1, dominates game 4, outscoring 40-16 on the road. Take that same punch again in game 2, and this time Boston stays on the mat. So, let's start talking about game 3 and kind of peering ahead to the series now. It's basically a best of 5. What are your initial impressions through the first 2 games so far?
Yeah, I'll keep this first part pretty brief because this is actually our next talking point. But I got to start with this because I think this has been the thing that I predicted. I predicted this. I've predicted many things wrong. I've definitely predicted, so far at least, this one right. I've been talking all about Steph Curry having himself a final series, going to have a historic performance, going to get that MVP. I said it at the All-Star break. Curry got his NBA All-Star Game MVP. Now he's hunting his NBA Finals MVP. Pretty much the only thing missing in that trophy case. And scored 34 points in game 1, 29 in game 2, shooting 46% from 3. Also, Tom, only 4 turnovers the first 2 games combined. So to me, Steph Curry's play stands out. He's obviously focused. He's in a rhythm. And he is here to play, which could be dangerous for the Celtics. Clay, on the other hand, we'll talk about that later, not playing as well. But on Boston's side, my first impression is Boston from three-point land. This is a team that in that game 2 loss where they didn't score much, it wasn't because they didn't hit threes. They had 18 turnovers and shot 35% from twos. So they shot 40.5 from 3 in that game, and they made 15 of them in game 2. And in game 1, they made 21, shooting 21 of 41, and they made 9 of 12 in the fourth quarter. So obviously they're not going to make 75% of threes going forward in the series, but that's a team that was 14th out of 30 in the NBA this season in three-point percentage. They made 35.6% of their threes in the regular season. So the fact that they're hitting such a high clip in these finals is pretty impressive. And the real question for me in that is that part of the Warriors' strategy? Because I know we talked about how they maybe have a size disadvantage, or they may be clogging the paint and saying, we'll live with those three-pointers. You can beat us from the 3. We're not going to give you the easy 2s. Or does Golden State actually have to maybe tighten up that three-point defense a little bit? Because Boston did hit some tough shots, but certainly in that fourth quarter in game one, particularly, they had some easy looks. Keep that Boston 3-point percentage and the amount of threes they're making. Keep that in mind going forward the rest of the series for sure.
Absolutely. I think that the main takeaway from me is the word anomalous, because you look at game one where you have Al Horford shooting, I believe it was like 6 of 8 from three, absolutely dominating in that game. Derek White, I think, also shot really, really well from three, maybe, had like 5 of 7 or something like that. I have to pull up the box score itself on that one. 2 of 4 from three for Derek White, but certainly prolific output on Boston's end. That was a bit anomalous, quite frankly. And then you go and you look at what happened in game two. I think that's also an anomaly. I find it kind of interesting. Game one, Warriors put up 107 points. Game two, they put up 108 points. So it's telling me that Boston's defense is pretty much locked into where it's going to be throughout the series. It's just a matter of if its mercurial offense is going to hit that high point or that low point. As you mentioned, turnovers are a huge, huge part of that. Because quite frankly, they just don't take care of the ball particularly well. I mean, Marcus Smart, fantastic defender, plays the point guard position, so to speak, but he's not really a distributor in the way that, say, a Steph is or a more traditional point guard. And then you look at Jaylen Brown. He's great when he gets downhill heading to the basket, but he's also pretty careless with the handles as well. That's a part of his game that he has not yet tightened up. So really, that's what it kind of comes down to, is there's a lot more variance on Boston's side offensively in their output on that. So, I'd say so far, the two games being as different as they are in an outcome and kind of style, I'd say we still haven't really seen what the series is going to be, unless it is going to be this erratic up and down performance, at least on Boston's side, because again, Golden State has been consistent through the first couple of games. That's going to be the really, really intriguing thing to kind of like suss out as the series goes on. So,
we'll have that in a little bit later. I know we have another topic before that, but I'll have a lot on that Celtics inconsistency, Tom. Just wait.
Absolutely. But somebody who has been consistent, like I said, on the Warriors side, like you already touched on, is Steph Curry. He's been off to an incredible start in this series. So one, do you think that this is going to continue? And two, what sort of things does Boston have to do to try to just slow him down a little bit? This is a little bit of, Black Mamba, you can't, or White Mamba, Brian Scalabrine, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. What do you see on that side?
So Tom, first off, what did I tell you last week? Great offense beats great defense. You're like, Marcus Smart, defensive player of the year. He's going to lock up Curry. That's my first impression. If you're a great player, you're going to put up those numbers. I know that first quarter in game one, they did give him too many open looks. That was obviously maybe a little bit of an outlier, even for Curry making 6 threes in a quarter. But at the end of the day, he's a tough guy to guard. He's going to come off screens. He'll beat you off the dribble. His teammates will be looking for him. I do think that great offense does beat great defense. On the other side, though, I'll say this. Maybe the Celtics are okay with Curry doing what he's doing, because the rest of the Warriors have not gotten in a rhythm. It's interesting because we've kind of talked about this so many series going into the playoffs. Like the last series, I said Curry's got better teammates than Luka. Curry, I think, has better teammates than Jason Tatum. I think Curry's got better teammates than Giannis. It's been this talk of like, hey, Curry's got this great supporting cast around him, which he didn't have the last couple years. But those guys have not shown up in the finals. I think in game two, he made a little bit more of an effort to get him going. And Jordan Poole did get going. That was huge for the Warriors. But we'll have this in the next segment. Clay is like MIA, but I do think he'll pick it up. But as far as the Celtics, like, obviously, they don't want to leave him wide open, but maybe they don't want to, double team him as much as they could. Maybe they're okay with him going off. Now, I'll tell you this. Once Clay gets hot, which that's going to happen once Wiggins gets hot, that strategy may be different. Things could change if those other guys start hitting shots, and then that opens up the game for Curry. But I think right now, look for him to put up over 30 a game in this series, no problem, because Boston is doing enough to win these games. You mentioned the 108 and 107 points. This is the high-powered Warriors team that is definitely well under their season averages. For Boston, the issue is the offensive end. So as long as the Warriors are scoring 108 a game, I think Boston can live with that. So I expect Curry to keep doing what he's doing. If he gets insanely hot, or if those other guys also get hot, then I can see the Celtics maybe double teaming more. But right now, Curry's hot and the Celtics are fine on that end. So I definitely anticipate this performance is to keep going, if not get better. Like, I think he's going to get a 40-point game in these finals. I really do.
I think it's a little more likely that he's going to have like one dud game at some point, just because like he's not in his prime anymore, and we've already seen that a bit in the playoffs. I think for the key for Boston is that, well, to answer the first question, I think Curry is going to continue being at this excellent level. But where you think he's got a 40-point game in there, I wouldn't be surprised if he hit a 40-point game. I'm thinking it's a little bit more likely that he has like a 20 or sub 20-point game at some point.
And he might have both.
He could very well have both. Yeah, at this stage of his career. I think as far as like the strategy, there were far too many times in game one and game two where Boston, especially in that first quarter, Boston just kind of lost Steph Curry, where it's this weird thing where they kind of forgot that he was Steph Curry. So like you can't go under screens, you can't run a drop pick and roll defense. You have to be chasing Steph around those screens hard. It's going to be like it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's a really tough thing considering that they are already playing at a high level as is. But just felt sometimes that like Boston just kind of forgot how good Steph Curry is at shooting the ball, and so in going under the screens, he just has this nice open 3-point shot that's basically like a layup for him. And his handles are that good where he can just pull up as soon as he sees you going under the screen. He doesn't even have to go all the way around. He's just going to pull up over you on that. So I think definitely he's going to continue playing really, really well this series. And I think that the question you pose is an interesting one. Is Boston kind of taking a page out of the Warriors book with the Luka Doncic thing? That was something I had in my notes to touch on a little bit, where sure, Steph can go out and put up 30, 35, 40. Hell, he can put up even 50 points in an NBA Finals game. But if you keep everybody else from doing their thing, if you keep everybody else out of a rhythm, first off, Steph isn't going to play all 48 minutes. And even if he did, he wouldn't be that effective through all 48 minutes. So you just kind of like try to weather the Curry flurry, so to speak, and then hit him back on the other end when he's a little bit, trying to like either resting up on defense or taking a breather himself. So I'm definitely excited to see him continue to do this, because I think that certainly to this point in the series, it's hard to see anybody else on the Warriors winning Finals MVP. So it's definitely like an exciting part of the narrative that he has. I'm not entirely convinced, though, that Golden State is going to end up winning this series. I don't think that's fait accompli.
We'll have that a little bit later in this segment.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I'm as on the fence as I was heading into this series, where I said Warriors in 7, and if I had to pick, it would come down to like the last second shot type of thing in Game 7, which those kind of like romantic moments rarely happen in these types of series. But I think it's that close, and I still think it's that close. Nothing in games 1 or 2 have convinced me to come off that point where it's 50.1 to 49.9 on that coin flip, so to speak. But Curry's currently the only healthy member, at least in the box score, of the Splash Brothers duo. Clay is simply not playing well. Do you think that this is still an effect of him recovering from injury? Because that's not necessarily a linear process. Just because he came back this year and has been playing doesn't mean he's still going to have, ups and downs, ebbs and flows. Do you see Clay heating up at some point, maybe in Game 6? Who knows?
Game 6, Clay. So actually, Tom, I want to counteract what you're going to say. Maybe we're giving away our picks and we'll have the reasons earlier. But I was probably about 60-40 going into the series on the Warriors winning, and I'm still at about 60-40. And that is because I expected this from Curry. I had a feeling he was going to kill it in the finals. The fact that he's been killing it and Klay hasn't, I think the Warriors have more upside. We'll have this in a segment later on, but Tatum and Brown have been inconsistent the entire playoffs, as is Boston's offense, and as have their role players, as we'll touch on with Horford and Marcus Smart. You know, Al going 26 to 2 points. But Klay Thompson, I think, has played really well these playoffs. And sure, like, is he at like 100% where he was when they were winning the championships? Maybe not quite there, but I think he's a lot closer than you or a lot of people realize. And keep this in mind with Klay. This has always been the thing with Klay. He's a very streaky player. Like, you know, he's a guy that has dropped 30 and a quarter. He's dropped double-digit threes. He's also had a lot of these bad shooting performances in the past. This isn't something new. I know Klay is one of the all-time great players, but he is like hotter than hot, and he could be colder than cold. And Curry, to some extent, is similar, but Curry's a little bit more consistent than Klay. That's why you see Curry's percentages are a little bit higher than Klay, despite the fact that he actually takes more shots. And, you know, you just referenced it. Game 6 Klay, that 41-point epic game against the Thunder in 2016 when he made 11 threes to save elimination. He did it in Game 5, the last series against the Mavs, with 32 points, knocking down a bunch of threes. So he's always been an up and down shooter. That's just how he is. And unlike Steph, he does rely more on his shot. Steph can actually go to the basket. He's great at the floaters. Steph is also a great passer. Steph is a better overall player than Klay. Klay is more of just a typical shooter. So the fact that, you know, he's shooting in the 30% from the field and the 20% from three, that's not shocking because it's only 2 games in. We've seen him get better as the series goes on. This narrative happens all the time. The later the series gets, the better Klay plays. I think Klay Thompson is going to be Klay Thompson, and that is why the Warriors, I think, to me, have the advantage because their co-star is playing like a bench player who can't hit shots. And Klay is going to show up at some point. It may not be every game, but he is going to be due for like a 30, 40-point game. No problem. Give me Klay to ball out for the Warriors later on this series. I think it's a hit or miss league, as Draymond said. Sometimes shots go in, sometimes don't. But I'll trust Klay to knock down those threes. I don't think he'll be 4 of 19 like the last game. I don't think he'll be 1 of 8 on 3. I mean, he shot the ball pretty good in that Dallas series. Look at game 4 and 5, 50%, 48%. And he made 8 of 16 on threes in game 5. So he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think that this is just going to kind of be a little closer to what Klay Thompson's going to be because, quite frankly, you look at the age curve. At the age of 32, shooting is definitely one of those skills that isn't necessarily as perishable as straight up athleticism is. But I mean, given how good Boston is on defense, especially man to man, like individual defense, as much as team defense, I think Klay's going to have a little bit of a tougher time in this series. I certainly think he's going to have a game or two, but I don't know if he's still at that point where he's going to consistently be that second option to Steph Curry. That's where I think somebody like a Jordan Poole, or on occasion, if you get like that hot Otto Porter game where he hits a bunch of shots or something like that, kind of in this motion offense, you know, Andrew Wiggins, kind of being that secondary option. I just think it's like the individual defense, and maybe it's that kind of tying back into the whole, okay, we'll let Steph get what Steph wants, but we're not going to let Klay Thompson get hot type of thing. It could simply be a decision on Boston's part to be defending him a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more dedication to trying to stop Klay Thompson. I think, you know, he'll probably pop off for like a hot game or two. I certainly don't think it's going to be as bad as he was in game two. I think we're kind of looking more along game one where, decent volume of shots. I think he put up like 14 shots in that game, around 15 points. I could see him being like a consistent 15 to 20 points in this series, which is nothing to sneeze at by any stretch of the imagination. Do we see like a game six type of thing out of Klay? I think we could see maybe one of those, but I just don't think that. I think his high is not going to be as high as Steph's, and his low is going to be lower.
I just want to say one thing. I think Klay is going to average 20 points per game over the last 3, 4, 5 games of the series. He'll probably end up under 20 because of his cold start the first 2 games, but the rest of the series, mark it down, Tuesday, June 7th, 5:12 p.m., Klay will average at least 20 a game for the rest of the series. And I get what you're saying, Tom. I get that Klay and Steph may not quite be at the premises of their prime, but I think both of them are a lot closer than you think. And I think you're selling both of those guys a little bit short. And like you said, shooting is not something that you lose as much as your athleticism.
Sure.
I think the injuries to Steph and Klay have maybe been the thing to key in on as to why the percentages are a little lower this year, but it's the law of averages. The law of averages, and they're coming in Steph's favor in these finals. They'll come back around in Klay's favor. Don't sell the Splash Brothers short. Don't you do it. They'll splash threes all night in your face.
Well, certainly would be. Oh no, that's not the Garden. So I can definitely. Is it TD Garden? Is that?
I think it is a Garden. It is like,
a Garden. It's not the Garden.
It's a Garden.
I don't know. We'll see if there's a little bit of a spritz in store for Game 3 here. On the other side, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they've been up and down in this series for a different reason. Where for me, I'm saying a little bit age, a little bit injury, contributing to Steph and Klay. For Tatum and Brown, it's a little bit youthful inexperience. It's a little bit still figuring out their games at the professional level. I mean, let's keep in mind that I think it was like around like December, January, Boston was kind of like in that play-in game situation. There are a lot of people wondering, is Boston ever going to put it together? Is it time to, blow it up somehow? Who knows? So even just within the story arc of this season, they're still figuring things out on their end. So they've been up and down so far. Do you see consistency coming out of these guys as far as the results, or do you think they're going to be consistently inconsistent through the rest of the series?
They'll be consistently inconsistent. And I'll give you Brown's box score is similar, but I don't want to sit here for 50 million years listing off box scores. But this is Jason Tatum's field goal postseason game logs. This is every postseason game so far. So first postseason game, 9 of 18. He was great. Second one, 5 of 16. Not so great. 13 of 29. Not the best. 9 of 16. Pretty good. Then he was 6 of 18. Terrible. 10 of 20. Pretty good. 4 of 19. Terrible. 11 of 24. Pretty good. 12 of 29. Not good. 17 of 32. Pretty good. 7 of 14, 10 of 21, 8 of 13. He had 3-game stretch there where he played well, but then he went back down to 3 of 14. Then he had 8 of 16, then back down to 7 of 20. 9 of 12, 9 of 21, 3 of 17, 8 of 19. So in all, he's shooting about 43% and 39% from 3. So ironically, he's actually making a decent amount of his threes. His 2-point shots haven't been as good as they could be. So I think you see the same stuff in Jaylen Brown, too, because Brown started off incredibly in game 2 and then got ice cold. In game 1, it was the opposite. He started off ice cold, got hot at the end. So these two guys, okay, I don't want you to misunderstand me for saying that Tatum's not a great player. He is a great player, but I think Boston is a great team. I don't think Jason Tatum is a top 5 player in the NBA. I'm not even sure if I put him in the top 10. These inconsistencies is what we've seen the entire season from Jason Tatum. and Jaylen Brown. They're great players. I mean, maybe he's borderline 10, maybe he's 9, 10, but they win because they play great defense, and the role players give them just enough, but it's two great players on the same team. They're two 1A type players, not necessarily like two, like the best of the best. And I think part of that is like you look at like LeBron and Giannis. LeBron and Giannis can freaking go out and get a dunk anytime they need to. They can go to the hoop. They can score at the paint. Kevin Durant, like even he can do that at times. And Tatum and Brown are good shooters, but they're not like a Steph Curry or a Kevin Durant. Like those guys are next level shooters. So they're like very, very good offensive players, but they're more perimeter based. They don't have enough of a post up game. They don't have enough of a drive game, and they're susceptible for being on and off. They're not the same type of level player as a LeBron James or even like a Michael Jordan, who got a lot of baskets, especially early in his career, driving to the hoop. Those guys don't consistently do that. And the fact that Tatum and Brown have been up and down in every playoff series, it's not just the NBA Finals atmosphere. It's not just the Warriors defense. It's quite frankly just who they are. And Steph Curry's up and down too. I'm not saying that he's not up and down. Every star has good and bad games, but relatively speaking, the vast majority of like the top players, those guys, the 6, 7 best players in the NBA, they're on like about 80% of the time. Tatum and Brown are more in that 60-40 range to me. So I absolutely think their inconsistency will continue because we've seen it the whole season. We've seen it the whole playoffs. So there's nothing to lead me to believe that Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown are capable of putting together 3, 4, 5 straight great shooting games. I just don't see it. And that's the problem. That is the problem. That is why they're not going to win the finals, because they're great players. But if you think about like all the NBA finals champions of the last few years, the star player, the MVP, Giannis, LeBron, like even if we go back, Curry, Durant, even Kawhi Leonard. I don't think Tatum's as good as Kawhi Leonard. I mean, obviously we had Shaq and Kobe, Tim Duncan. Other than maybe the Detroit Pistons team that we talked about last week, other than those guys, whatever team has won the championship, they have had an absolutely great megastar who has been in that given season a top 5 player in the game. All due respect to Jason Tatum, he is not a top 5 player. Curry, you know, you could debate that, but Curry is definitely much closer to a top 5 player. He's much more proven. And I just don't see the consistency in Jason Tatum. And I'll go out and say this. I'll be bold. I'll say this. Jason Tatum, a little bit overrated. 43% from the floor in the playoffs. Overrated.
I mean, he's right. I mean, I'd say he's on that fringe of like top 10 to top 12. I agree that,
but he's not clearly top 5 though. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
and
no,
to
no,
win
he's not
the
clearly top
championship,
5.
very often the player is right on that top 5 discussion, and he's not. He's not in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular season, I'd say neither team has that. I don't think you can say that Steph is a top 5 player in the entirety of the NBA this year.
He's a lot closer to that.
He definitely has the historical pedigree that, you know, he can get to that point, obviously. No, I think consistently inconsistent as well for the both of them, because this is part of the learning process. This is kind of the, you know, what we're going to see them develop into. I think it is possible. I mean, we're talking about the variance for Steph and Clay. I think it's very possible that Jason Tatum, for example, could get hot. And by the end of this series, we are now putting him in this pantheon of the greats in the game today. If Boston goes on and wins that, you know, hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy, and Jason Tatum just absolutely goes all out for these, you know, next 3 to 5 games, I'm thinking it's going to be closer to the next 5 games than the next 3 games, to be sure. You know, this could be one of the things where we're kind of witnessing the ascension to being a definitive top 10 player.
I don't see it.
It could be.
Just to be clear,
I'm
Tom.
leaning more towards that it's going to be consistently inconsistent on that front for Jason Tatum. Yeah.
Tatum is 3 for 17 and 8 for 19 are his 2 field goal percentage games this series. I know he got like 13 assists in game 1. Give him credit for delivering in other areas. I know his defense has improved, but he's 3 for 17 and 8 for 19 so far this series. He's got to go out there and put up like something like a 20 for 30 game if he wants to get back in my graces. And even in these playoffs that he's played good,
if they win.
Look at his numbers. His best performance where he shot a high amount of shots was 17 for 32 these playoffs. I know he had like an 8 for 13. A 9 for 12. You'll be more efficient if you take less shots. But of the games where he had 20 or more shots in that neighborhood, he wasn't knocking down an insane amount of them. I mean, Steph Curry is shooting better from 3 in this series than Tatum has from the field the entire playoffs. So just something to think about. Because I think Tatum is too inconsistent for my liking. And part of that is he relies too much on the jump shot and maybe too much on the mid-range game. He's got to work on improving that drive to the hoop and get the easy bucket, because Steph Curry, as great of a three-point shooter as he is, Steph Curry is actually a great two-point shooter. He gets a lot of layups, a lot of floaters. It's a very underrated part of his game. Jason Tatum has not developed that ability to get an easy basket when he needs to. Even you said it last week. It seems like everything that Tatum and Brown have done in these playoffs, it just looks tough.
It looks difficult.
Tough.
Yeah.
It looks difficult. In the top tier star, he should make it look easy. And that's not what Tatum is doing right now.
We've got a lot of basketball left, so it'll be interesting to see how the series kind of grows and evolves with the stars throughout the next couple of games. But
role players.
Of course, role players are going to be really, really important, as the authorities are after me right now.
Tom, what'd you do?
We saw the importance of role players. At least, again, this is going to play heavily into the more of the Boston narrative, because we had great role play from Boston in game 1, and then the role players were absolutely absent in game 2. Whereas when you look at Golden State, pretty consistent, which might be, slow and steady, so to speak, is going to win this particular race. So in terms of game 3, do you think, at least on the Boston side, we're going to see something that more closely resembles game 1's output by the kind of like the secondary starters and the bench? Or do you think game 2 is going to be more where it's at, where just nobody's showing up?
Well, obviously it's going to be in the middle, but the numbers are staggering, because this is some of the most staggering things that I've ever seen. Because Al Horford went from 26 points to 2 points. Marcus Smart went from 18 points to 2 points in game 2. Robert Williams, 8 points and 6 rebounds in game 1, 2 points and 2 rebounds in game 2. So the Celtics had 3 starters. The role players in the starting unit each get 2 points each. You had 6 points from 3 of your starters. That's how you get to 88 or however many points they had. So first off, I want to say this about Al Horford. You and I both were high on his over in game 1. We were correct. But both of us were thinking more like he might do it in the paint. The amount of threes was an absolute aberration, just outlier beyond belief. As Draymond Green said it after game 1, he's not worried. It's a make or miss league. He knew that the Celtics were not going to make as many threes as they made in game 1, in particular in the fourth quarter. They were 9 of 12. I mean, Golden State could be up 2-0 in the series. They had a bad fourth quarter, but it was more of just a Boston three party, not the tea party, the three party. Al Horford, Tom, for his career, averages 0.6 threes per game. I know early in his career he didn't shoot as many, but this season he averaged 1.3 threes per game. He shot 34% from 3, which is a little bit below league average. Not that impressive of a number. Obviously, for a big guy, not horrible, but certainly nothing impressive by any means. So the fact that he made 6 out of 8 3-pointers in an NBA Finals game, I mean, that simply is never going to happen again. If Al Horford makes 6 threes in an NBA Finals game again, I don't know what I'll do, but I would definitely be beyond shocked. I think we can't expect the Celtics role players to give them what they gave them in game 1. I think they'll be better than they were in game 2, but I think the Warriors role players are going to get much better as well. That's something we talked about at the NBA Finals preview we had last week. Warriors have a barrage of role players like, Gary Payton, Iguodala, Otto Porter Jr., Kuminga, Bjelica. Like, there's not necessarily one great guy other than Jordan Poole, who, by the way, is by far the best bench player, by far the best role player in this series, and he showed it in the last game. But Warriors have the ability to have a different guy do it on a different given night, and they simply have more good role players that someone's going to do it. And I think those guys will step up. Boston's players, I mean, Derek White made a lot of threes in game 1, too. That was also a little bit out of the ordinary. I don't think Boston's role players are going to be at that level. One thing that we don't talk, maybe you and I talk about this a lot, but the national media maybe doesn't. Boston is in the NBA Finals because of its defense. They've got a solid scoring team, but they're not an amazing offense. They're there because of their defense. And it's the same age-old argument, Tom. LeBron James in 2007 took one of the worst teams ever to the NBA Finals. Think about this for a second, though. That was one of the worst offensive teams in league history, but the 2007 Cavaliers had a great defense. That is what Boston has, and the great defense is probably good enough to get you to the finals, but not good enough to get you over the mountaintop, because the Warriors play D as well. So I think Boston's role players, they're going to be humbled. Boston in general is going to be humbled the rest of the series. I do think they can win. It wouldn't shock me, but Boston is too inconsistent. Definitely think their role players will show more of the inconsistency than the greatness the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm leaning more toward we'll see something not obviously exactly on par with game 1, but especially as we're heading back to Boston, and this is, the age-old thing I really love to reference when it comes to talking about basketball is that role players do better when they're at home. I'm not sure what exactly goes in that phenomenon, because the hoop is the same size no matter which arena you're in.
Not true for the Celtics, though. Grant Williams was out there putting up great road games. Al Horford, sure. I mean, these guys are 5-4 at home in the playoffs, and they're what?
Yeah.
Their record on the road is way better. So it's like a weird thing where they may not be true with this Boston team.
Maybe not. I'm going to lean closer to, the game 1, not necessarily, again, like Al Horford's not going to go 6 for 8 from 3, but he's certainly going to be more effective than he was in game 2. I think Marcus Smart's going to be more effective, in filling up the box score a little bit more than he was in game 2. So I think we're going to see more positive regression than negative regression for Boston. As far as Golden State goes, I mean, I think we're pretty much going to see like the same level of thing. I mean, Jordan Poole game 1, 9 points, 17 in game 2. I think he's probably going to be somewhere in the teens throughout the series, especially if he's going to be playing, these, like 20 something odd minutes type of thing. I think he's going to go out there, be instant offense, just add water type of deal. But looking at the role players, like I think probably like the biggest role player I've got my eye on, and it's debatable if you want to even call him a role player, is Draymond Green. I mean, we saw the impact that he had, not necessarily as many statistics in game 2 as he had in game 1. But overall, just like the way that he approached the game, getting that early technical foul, which I know that Draymond Green is regarded as a really, really smart NBA player, like really, really smart when it comes to playing the game. I think that not necessarily on purpose got the technical, but I know he was pushing the envelope all throughout the game. And I think by setting up the technical the way that he did early on, basically kind of daring the officials, like, go ahead and throw out the third best player on an NBA contending team on technical fouls and make it the story, well, like on the Warriors, I mean.
Yeah.
And
well, I don't know. Jordan Poole, I mean, like in all honesty,
I think Draymond's more important than Poole. I know he doesn't score as much, but what he does on defense.
Well, right now, Clay is the fourth right now, the way he's playing. So
true.
Third is probably accurate anyway.
So basically, it's going to be really fun to see throughout the rest of the series how Draymond approaches, just basically being, I'll say a pest. We'll use a polite term. There's several other words, 4 letters and otherwise, that you could use to describe Draymond Green and how he's been on the court. Basically, just always in the official's face, like every single time the camera cuts away to a referee, you can pretty much, flip a coin, and Draymond Green is going to be right in that referee's ear. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how the series goes for him as well. Definitely want to touch on him because we've been giving a lot of love to the guys that put up all the points. I definitely wanted to touch on Draymond Green as well because I'm glad that he's not going up against, say, the Chicago Bulls in the NBA Finals, because I probably would be a lot more upset at him.
Sure.
But as kind of like a neutral observer, I'm okay cheering for some chaos.
Draymond is better than Marcus Smart, by the way. And I'll say this: talk about Draymond and Marcus Smart. They're both good on defense. Neither is necessarily a great scorer, but Draymond is a much better facilitator and passer than Marcus Smart. So if you're talking about role players, age-old debate. Draymond, is he the second best player, the third, the fourth on the Warriors? It's hard to say. Depends on the game, but definitely a very important guy for sure.
Absolutely. So we talked in depth about the series, both last week, previewing it, now 2 games in. So just really quickly, are you changing your stance on Warriors? I believe you had Warriors in 6.
Warriors in 6.
Are you holding with that, or do you think it's going to go 7? Or do you think it's going to end a little sooner?
I think Warriors in 6 is a safe prediction. It could go 7. Again, I talked about this already, but Klay Thompson had 15 points and 11 points in the 2 games this series, shooting 32% from the floor, just under 28% from 3. Also only has 5 rebounds and 4 assists the entire series. I know he's not necessarily a great assist and rebound guy, but his numbers across the board are lower, whether it's points, field goal percentage, rebounds, assists. They're going to get a lot more from Klay, and that series will shift in Golden State's favor. My best case prediction would be they split the 2 games in Boston. Warriors win game 5 at home. And then game 6 to me is a total toss-up. I think it could go either way. I'll lean on the Warriors getting the game 6 win. Maybe game 6 Klay shows up in game 6 and the Warriors win in Boston. But, it's the NBA. I've underestimated Boston the entire playoffs, so maybe I'm doing it again. Boston winning the series would not shock me, but if I had to make a pick, I will lean Warriors in 6 with the possibility of Warriors in 7. If Boston is to win the series, though, I'm pretty sure it would be in 7. Like if Boston won in 6, that would surprise me. I really think the Warriors are definitely good to get at least one of the next 2 games. 26 straight playoff series with the road win. I don't see that streak coming off the board, especially given that Boston has basically been almost a 500 team at home in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I said Golden State by the slimmest of margins back when we started this. So nothing I've seen in games 1 and 2 is going to sway me from that very on the fence, straddling the fence position.
Sure.
Like I said, like I just mentioned, as a neutral observer, I'm just really excited for the basketball itself, hoping certainly for some better outcomes than that game 2 result, which is pretty much a pretty boring second half as far as the outcome goes. At least with game 1, I know Boston ended up winning by about the same margin that they lost by game 2, but at least they had the comeback element of battling back after a third quarter and being like a really, really shocking fourth quarter result for Boston. So that at least was a fun kind of blowout toward the end of the game.
Game
So
three will be
hopefully,
close, Tom. Within the last minute of the game, you will not be convinced who wins. I think this could be a game that goes down
mm,
to the last possession. Game three is going to be very hard. I think both teams recognize the importance of the game three.
absolutely. So we're sticking with the Warriors. I imagine Drew is going to hold fast to his guns in picking the Celtics
Sure.
pre-series. So yeah, definitely, it's great that we're 2 games in and we're not swayed overly one way or another. That it is still so up in the air. It's going to be for make for some compelling television down the stretch here. Speaking of some compelling television, touching on the NHL, Tampa right now down 2 games to 1 to the Rangers. We can also recap on the Colorado Avalanche.
Your
So
boys.
not so much suspense in that one. As just really quickly, we'll just touch on Avalanche. Absolutely rolled through Edmonton, clearing them out in a 4-game sweep. So I believe that makes
Sweet.
2 sweeps for Colorado, and then they somehow ended up having to go 6 games to defeat the St. Louis Blues. But the Avalanche just absolutely steamrolling people, even though game 4 was really, really intense game. 11 goals scored in that one, 6-5.
Not as
Um,
much as the first game or second game where it was 8-6,
it
though.
was ridiculous with that
Yeah.
series. Just a lot of speed on the ice, a lot of up and down. So basically, going to the one that's more competitive,
I did
does
want to hit
Tampa? Oh,
one
go
one
ahead.
thing on Colorado, Tom.
Sure.
They have 2 losses the whole playoffs. There's a whole bunch of teams, but it did tie the record for least losses heading into the Stanley Cup. So there's
Oh
never been a
wow.
team that's won into the Stanley Cup that has had 0 or 1 loss. There's been a bunch that have 2, but it's tied for the record. And the Blues, by the way, I was in Missouri. I was outside the stadium for one of the Stanley Cup games just a few years ago. So that is a Blues team that has a lot of championship experience. So obviously a team that was not going to lay down easy. So the fact that they lost 2 games to the Blues are a tough team. So definitely
Mhm.
one of the most dominant playoff performances so far for Colorado. And that is who you have winning it all. That's your team. I think you had someone else when we first started, but when
I had
we
the Calgary Flames.
yeah,
Yeah,
you revised to Colorado last week, and I'm sure
they
you're
just been
sticking with that
they just been too steamrolly for me to go
rolling
against
team.
them. Absolutely.
Go ahead with the other one though. What were you gonna say? Sorry to cut you off there.
No, no. So the other one, we've got Tampa Bay Lightning, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, currently down 2-1 to the Rangers. Um, Came from behind, quite frankly. They were down 2-1 after the second period, put in 2 goals in the third to stave off a pretty bleak outlook on the rest of the series. Certainly, we've seen a lot of series where up 2-1 doesn't really mean all that much because teams just kind of get hot and can go on runs. So do you see Tampa going on such a run? Do you think this is going to go the full 7, or do you think that New York kind of cinches down a little bit and continues to play like the better team, even if maybe on paper Tampa has the better overall talent?
I think this is going to go to 7. It feels like a 7-game series. I mean, Rangers have already played 2 7-game series in these playoffs. The Lightning played 1. The teams are pretty evenly matched. I think you saw the last game. You saw that they're pretty evenly matched. I really think it could go either way. I did pick Tampa before the series, but I might be leaning the other way because New York is 9-1 on the home ice. Obviously, Tampa has won 2 straight Stanley Cups. They're capable of getting a road game, but it's going to be tough. So I'll lean
Mhm.
the Rangers. But I think it is like that's like a 50.1, 49.9. Could go either way. But I think it's going to go 7. Obviously, if it goes 6, Rangers probably going to win. But my pick is, I guess, Rangers in 7. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
I think I'm going to stick with the Rangers as well. Certainly, you can't really go and say that the Lightning aren't battle tested, given that they've hoisted Lord Stanley's Cup in consecutive seasons now. But in this particular playoffs, New York has gone the distance in its 2 previous series, so they are definitely no strangers to any sort of pressure in terms of that. Being a bit of a Blackhawks fan, Artemi Panarin, former Blackhawk, had a kind of like a fun named podcast with Brian Campbell. They called it Soup and a Sandwich because Campbell, soup, Panarin, rooted in bread because you think about Panera bread type of thing. So anyway, I like how the Rangers have been playing so far in this series. Obviously, Stamkos, Kucherov are incredible.
Kucherov is awesome.
Offensive talents for Tampa Bay. So the pressure is definitely going to remain on for the Rangers, but I'm going to stick with them as well because, like, similar to the NBA Finals, haven't really seen anything in that series to make me want to switch over. And even if I did, I don't necessarily know that I would fully understand it, given that it is hockey. I know icing and clipping and little else on that front. So we got, we'll see. We'll have the first rust debate, I'm sure, as we talk about the Avalanches. They're going to be sitting on their hands for a few more games at least in the NHL playoffs. So a lot of fun to see how that turns out. Someplace we have not been for a while is the baseball diamond. So just kind of like resetting things a little bit. I know we had our preseason predictions. I don't have everybody's on my docket, but I know that out in the National League East, I had the Atlanta Braves atop that division with the Mets, admittedly as a wild card team. Mets have absolutely just steamrolled through that division so far, even though they have some pitching injuries right now. It's looking like they might have too much talent for that to matter a ton at this point in the season.
Yeah, Mets are definitely the real deal. I can't remember whether I had the Mets as the wild card or division winner, because I did say the Mets were my sleeper team in the National League. I definitely had them in the playoffs, but even I didn't think they'd be doing this great. You mentioned the pitching. Mizzou's Max Scherzer is out for a little bit. Jacob deGrom is out, but hasn't mattered so much so far. They have some other good pitchers in that rotation. And if they can get a healthy Scherzer and deGrom, they're probably the favorite in the National League. I know the Dodgers are a great team, but having those two ace pitchers with that lineup they have, it is dangerous. Actually, Mets are first in the league in runs scored. Dodgers are second, but have actually missed a few games. So they're like neck and neck right there for runs per game. Pete Alonso is a legitimate MVP candidate. And Francisco Lindor is not far behind. Alonso leading the majors in RBI. Lindor is fourth. On paper, the Dodgers might be slightly better. I know we talked about those 4 former MVPs. But in a short game series, like, Clayton Kershaw has had some injuries he's been dealing with. Walker Buehler, is a very good pitcher. But and this is a big if, especially on deGrom's part, because deGrom has been hurt a lot. If Scherzer and deGrom are healthy, the Mets are the favorite out of the National League. If one or both of those guys are not healthy, then the Dodgers are the favorite in the National League. But the Mets are certainly either 1 or 1A in the National League. They've been cleaning up, and I don't expect it to stop anytime soon. New York will definitely, for sure, win that division.
Yeah, I think New York, looking at the standings right now, just has too big of a lead. I know it's early in the season, but 9 games is not an insignificant amount of a lead on the rest of the division. And quite frankly, nobody else is really playing like they want to win the division. Atlanta has struggled considerably early on in the season, coming on a bit of late, winning 7 of their last 10. Philadelphia has fired Joe Girardi. So certainly without, no confidence in his job to kind of turn around the season. So I would say Mets very much for real. I know we kind of headlined, deGrom, Scherzer, that type of, pitching at the top, but they also acquired Chris Bassett, who has been kind of doing yeoman's work out in Oakland for these many years, finally getting a little bit of love in the limelight himself, as he's no slouch as a pitcher. So they have depth behind their 2 aces, which again is going to be a huge key in the playoffs when you're getting these shortened series and basically being able to say, we've got four guys. We don't have to try to bring somebody back on short rest. Maybe do something where you start deploying your early series starters as bullpen weapons type of thing to win a series. I definitely see the Mets as being a really, really interesting team to threaten for the pennant this year in a season where we thought that the Dodgers, quite frankly, I think we all had the Dodgers coming out of the National League. Maybe Drew is a bit contrarian because Drew really, really enjoys that. But
Carlos Carrasco, too, by the way, a really good pitcher as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely coming over. So it might not be fait accompli for the Dodgers to be the team coming out of the National League pennant this year, which is definitely a lot of fun. And this is kind of outside. I'd say this is kind of pushing the conversation a little bit, but they're no less a legitimate of a team. The San Diego Padres currently 2.5 games back of the Dodgers. I'd say they're not necessarily as close because Dodgers run differential is 113. Padres is 26. So that means that San Diego is putting away wins on much smaller margins, which means that there's probably a little bit more variance there. So do you see the Padres kind of being off to this great start that they're currently on as going to be the trend throughout the season, currently winning at a 600 clip, 33-22 on the year? Or are they going to have another unfortunate collapse like they did last year where LA and San Francisco, right there's the top two teams in baseball last season, San Diego falling off pretty hard in the second half?
I think they're going to continue this year. I don't think they're going to be as good as the Dodgers. I don't think they'll be as good as the Mets. They're in that 3-4 range in the NL. I think the Brewers with their pitching are up there as well. But I think the Padres are definitely going to make the playoffs. And keep this in mind. Fernando Tatis Jr. is not playing right now. That's their best player.
Yep.
And that is arguably a top 2, 3, for sure a top 5 player in baseball. Maybe the best player in the National League if he's healthy. I know we got Ohtani out there, Mike Trout, who's not himself. We'll get in those guys in a little bit. Vlad Guerrero Jr. I'm a huge fan of Aaron Judge, but a lot of the best players in baseball are actually in the American League, like the top stars. So Tatis Jr. coming back will help them. Part of their collapse was him getting hurt last year.
Yep.
So I think that'll be huge for them. Joe Musgrove, we'll talk about him in a little bit. He's leading the National League in most stats as far as the pitcher goes. He's off to an insane start. Is he going to keep it up? Probably not, but he's going to be pretty good. I think we've seen enough from him to expect greatness, and I think he's helped that pitching staff. Machado's playing very well. He's actually hitting really well, not only for power, for average. Obviously, a Gold Glove talent arm at third base. So I think they're absolutely going to keep it up. I know 2 years ago you mentioned this, Tom. They had one of the best records in baseball. They were done early in the playoffs. I think they kind of got in that matchup where they had to play the Dodgers, maybe it was, which wasn't a very good matchup for them. But I think that they had a lot of pressure on them this last year. It was a young team, and it showed. And pressure and injuries hurt them. I think the Dodgers are going to be just fine getting that wild card in the National League. Probably the first wild card spot, if not the first, at the very least, the second for San Diego. They are for real. I don't think they're on the same level as the Mets and Dodgers, though, who are clearly above everyone else. But you know this, in baseball, the best team, maybe soccer is up there with baseball as well. To an extent, hockey, but hockey's a 7-game series. I guess baseball is too. But my point is, in basketball, the best team usually wins. We do have upsets in football with the 1-game scenario, but it's usually one of the main culprits. In baseball, we have the underdog do much better way more often, as we had the Braves with the worst record in baseball last year of any playoff team win the whole thing. So get yourself in the dance and you've got a shot. I know the 2016 Cubs and what was that? The 2020 Dodgers, I believe, were, and this is not 100% certain. There might be someone I'm knocking off, but I believe since 2010, I think the stat I saw was, there's only been 2 teams that had the best record in the league and won the World Series. There might be a couple more, but I think that was what the stat was, and it was the Cubs and Dodgers, the only ones that actually did it. So you get in the dance, you've got a shot, especially in baseball.
Yeah, I mean the baseball regular season determines the best team in baseball that year. The World Series is kind of sort of a tournament. But that's definitely an opinion that a lot of baseball fans are not going to take too kindly to.
I agree, though.
In short, I don't think that the Padres are going to be falling off this year. I think a fairly significant contributor to that, oddly enough, and it's a debate on how much these kind of people matter. The manager is Bob Melvin, and you look at his resume, you look at what he did for years with the Oakland Athletics and the absolute dearth of talent because Oakland is famous for not investing resources, not investing capital into, big star, big league talent. It's all about find value on the margins and get somebody who knows how to tactily
get on base.
Like deploy them in a way that makes them most effective. And you give Bob Melvin guys like Manny Machado and eventually Fernando Tatis, they're going to do pretty well, I think. Jace Tingler, the former Padres manager, that was his first gig. Year one was the pandemic shortened 2020 season, and then last year where they finished 79 and 83 and out of the playoffs. So I think with Bob Melvin and also a little bit of last year's experience, Padres are going to be here to stay throughout the playoffs, or throughout the regular season and into the playoffs. Touching on the American League, okay, I'm gonna try to be as global as possible on this one because this is touching on my beloved Chicago White Sox. Twins currently sit 4.5 games ahead in first place in the American League Central. They're pretty beat up. The White Sox are pretty beat up. The Cleveland Guardians might say, hey, if neither of you want this division, we'll just go ahead and win it if you really want us to, even though they don't seem especially into contending this year. So do you think Twins win this division? Do you think White Sox come back? Comment. I've got my thoughts, and I'm not necessarily feeling so hot about them.
So I want to say this. 90 wins should be enough to win this division. I think that you might have the winner of this division will have less wins than probably any other division winner in either league.
Easily, yeah.
And as you mentioned, both teams are banged up. We know the White Sox here as Chicago fans. I mean, Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, all of these guys have missed at least 10 games. Dallas Keuchel, I mean, he might as well be missing. He's MIA with the way he's been pitching.
He's literally missing. They
missing.
Designated him for assignment. Right. He is now in Arizona.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that was just a shocker given how good Keuchel has been over the years. So White Sox clearly underachieving. Injuries clearly a part of it. But I mean, how many times have we talked about the White Sox and injuries? I know there's a certain amount of flukiness and luck, sure. But it's the same deal that happens with Barcelona soccer, the team that I've seen. I got to question maybe the training staff or, whatever they're doing. They seem to probably not be doing their luck. That might be unfair, but I've just seen so many injuries with the White Sox the last few years. As for the Twins are definitely off to a fluke start. I think they're going to level off. I think the only way they do win this division is because the White Sox are so hurt, and it's because they get some wins against lesser competition. I mean, the Guardians, the Tigers, the Royals, these are not good baseball teams in the AL Central. So, I mean, you look at Luis Arias. He's a really good player. I'm not saying he's not, but he's hitting 358 this year. 358. He had 294 last year, which is pretty good, very, very good for the modern major league game. But he is currently hitting 64 points better than he did last year. There is no way Luis Arias at season's end will be hitting 358. He'd be lucky to be hitting 318. So he's obviously playing better than he's going to play. You look at Byron Buxton. He's been banged up, but you look at how hot he started. I know we skipped the show a couple of weeks ago and we were going to do the early season contender, pretender. We're doing it a few weeks later. I had Byron Buxton in the rundown because he was up there with Aaron Judge and everybody for leading stats. I know injuries have hurt him, but part of their hot start is because Buxton played better than he's going to play. Arias is playing better than he's going to play. I know Carlos Correa, I think, has been banged up as well, but they might get him. He'll be a great player, but I think the Twins, I'm going to pick the White Sox just because I'm a Chicago fan. I like the Cubs and Sox, and I think the White Sox definitely have a better roster. So if they can stay healthy, the White Sox should win this division. But the if in staying healthy is definitely a big question mark for the White Sox. This is definitely a 50-50 scenario, but I'm leaning White Sox, but I don't think the winner of this division is going to have a lot of wins. And I'm not necessarily banking on the winner of this division, winning a playoff series, to be honest. I think it'll be a one and done type thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the one and done. I'm going to say White Sox as well. I'm just not feeling good about it because all the issues, all the problems that we're seeing on this team now are things that could and probably should have been addressed earlier in the season. It's how often do we have World Series champions, or even if you just want to say like regular season champions, quote unquote, the teams that end up with the best records in baseball, how often do we see them go through a season without any sort of injury or any sort of underperformance from some of their players? I mean, looking at some of the additions that the White Sox made in a vacuum, they're fine acquisitions if those guys are, the 24th, 25th, 26th man on your roster, not necessarily your starting second baseman. No diss on Josh Harrison, but he's just not a starting second baseman in Major League Baseball. And the White Sox decided we're going to operate the season as if he fills that need, where he kind of doesn't. He does on a like I said, inter-season basis. So, I'm not super happy with where the White Sox are right now. I understand it's really frustrating because there have been a ton of injuries so far. But definitely they have not put themselves in a position to succeed on capitalizing in this window of contention that they have. So at least for this season, I'm looking at this as not a positive step for that franchise. A franchise that was off to a nice start.
We liked them a couple weeks ago.
Is now also without their manager. That's breaking news that came through earlier today. Joe Maddon out
Cubs
as
legend.
the Angels manager after a 12-game losing streak, during which Mike Trout, I think at one point, was 0 for 26.
Yep.
A lot of pressure for the Angels of Los Angeles to perform because you've got the best player in baseball, Mike Trout. You've got the most exciting player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani, basically because he can hit, he can pitch. He's a lot of fun to watch. You got to make the postseason, and the Angels simply have not been able to do that. So moving, sometimes you see a little bit of a bounce after there's a change in the manager mid-season. Are the Angels going to get to experience a bit of that bump, or do you think they're going to be residing as a sub-500 team, or just kind of like hovering around 500 team and perhaps missing out even on this extended playoff field?
Yeah, they'll be hovering around 500, I think. I think that they would have, I don't know. I don't know if they'd make it or not in the National League. But in the American League, they definitely will not make it. You look at the American League East, I mean, you have probably wild cards galore coming out of the American League East. You're going to tell me that the Blue Jays and the Rays aren't going to get wild card spots? Those guys definitely will. I want to say this. I want to see more of the season, but I want to pump the brakes on this Mike Trout best player in baseball thing, because Mike Trout missed a lot of last season with injury, and I'm not convinced that we're going to see the same Mike Trout. I think Mike Trout was the best player in baseball 2 years ago. I don't think he's the best player on his team if Ohtani is healthy. Obviously, a healthy Ohtani, I think, is probably the best player in baseball considering pitching and hitting both, but he's also hit under 200 in this losing streak, and they don't have enough good players around them. Why have they lost 12 games in a row? Because Ohtani and Trout are playing really, really bad. Like, can the Angels win if those guys have bad games? They can't. They can't. I know they picked up Noah Syndergaard. I know pitching has been an issue with them. He hasn't been himself early on this season. And Ohtani and Trout have had like so many injuries the last few years. Like, can you rely on both of them to be healthy for an entire season? Because we haven't seen it since they've been teammates. It's either been Ohtani or Trout or both injured. So, yeah, I think they're a team that's not going to make the playoffs. It is disappointing to see because I think anyone would agree that Ohtani and Trout would be must watch in a baseball series. And given how talented they are, that's a team that in a short series, you say this, Tom, you say this, baseball is not really the best team, isn't really the World Series champ. It's a tournament. Well, what can happen in a tournament? Like, two guys can't carry you over a 162 game season. They can carry you in a 7-game series, a 5-game series, a 1-game play-in, a 3-game series, whatever they're doing these days in baseball. I'm losing track of it. But as far as over 162, Angels will not make the playoffs. And I'm not so sure that Joe Madden was the problem. I don't watch Angels baseball on a regular basis. I don't know if that was the problem, but Joe Madden obviously helped the Cubs win a World Series. My gut feeling is that they're not going to get someone better than him. I mean, Joe Madden is a pretty good MLB manager. I don't necessarily see this bump. I think maybe Joe Girardi in Philly isn't as accomplished of a MLB manager. Maybe Philly can get a bump, but I'm not too sure. I mean, obviously the Angels aren't going to lose 12 in a row with the new manager. I think not, but they're not going to get enough of a bump to beat some of those high-powered teams. I mean, the Astros are clearly top dog in the division, and there's 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 teams in the American League East who are better than them. Red Sox playing a little bit better ball of late as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that basically it all comes down to health. I think we're going to see a little bit of a bounce from the Angels. I think we're also going to see some investment in them at the trade deadline. That's going to be something we're going to see a lot of with this expanded postseason format where 8 teams are making it in both leagues. So I think, Angels will probably hover around that 500 mark. I think they'll do enough to make it into the playoffs just because looking at a couple of teams ahead of them on the standings, I don't think the Cleveland Guardians are going to be there. I don't think, the loser of the White Sox Twins division title is going to be in the playoffs. I don't think the Central is good enough to kind of hold that. So basically it comes down to, can the Angels outperform one of Toronto, Tampa, or Boston? We'll see. We'll see.
So is it 3 wild cards? How many wild cards is it?
It's. Did I say 8 teams? I meant 6 teams are making it. I thought you meant
6. Yeah.
I have to look at the format again. I know I touched on this early season.
It's crazy.
Basically, it said
I think it's. I know it was 2 last year, but it might be 3 this year. I think I think you're right. You look it up right now to confirm.
Yeah.
But I think either way, they're not going to be top 3 wild card either, Tom. I think regardless, I don't know. I don't see it with that team. I really don't.
All right. So it's 6 teams per league.
Yeah.
So, so there's not 8.
I thought it was.
Yeah,
wrong,
that was a little high.
Like,
I knew it was more. I knew it was more than the number was higher than what it was. So I think the Angels definitely can be a playoff team, but certainly they're going to have to certainly be better. Noah Syndergaard's going to have to be better than he's been times during the season. Trout's going to have to be healthy and avoid those sorts of lulls. Anthony Rendon is going to have to play like the second best or perhaps third best a hitter on the team, second best position player on the team overall. Couple of hot starts for some pitchers in baseball in the National League. Joe Musgrove standing out as he leads the NL in quality starts, ERA. He's second in wins. Nestor Cortez in the American League for the Yankees, who was unnecessarily slurred from by Jim Katt, the Hall of Famer. Oddly enough, after a story that
White
Nestor
Sox Hall of
Cortez
Famer.
had some slurs earlier, from some deleted tweets, or now deleted tweets at least referencing hip hop lyrics, perhaps at the very least. Maybe use an asterisk or something like that if you feel the need. You have to put that content out there. But anyway, he is leading all of baseball in ERA. So one or both of these guys Cy Young contenders? Is it just great start to start the season, and now as we're seeing a little bit more of a lively baseball, now that the weather's heating up, that there might be some return to what these guys have largely been throughout their careers, which is good, but not necessarily great pitchers?
Well, okay, so the good, not great is the Musgrove category. Cortez is the real deal. He's a young pitcher. He had a couple bad seasons when he first started, but you look at Cortez last year, they call him Nasty Nestor, 2.90 ERA last year. That is rock solid considering the division he plays in, considering he's playing against the Blue Jays and the Rays and the Red Sox. Even the Orioles have some good young hitters. Pitching is their issue. So I think Nestor Cortez is the real deal. Now, is he going to have a 1.50 ERA at season's end? No, he's not going to be. But they call him Nasty Nestor for a reason. He plays on the best team in baseball. I know we hit on the Yankees a few weeks ago. I didn't even think we needed to put him in the rundown because I know we both agree the Yankees are for real. Even as that ERA dips a little bit, those W's will keep on going. Nestor can allow 4 runs to start and still win, even when the Yankees have injuries. The lineup is simply that good. So Nestor Cortez, I think, has to be the favorite. I think he's going to win the American League Cy Young. And in the National League, it's kind of weird, but I almost think this is weird to say, and this is maybe disrespectful to some of the pitchers, but I just scanned the best ERAs in the National League, Tom, and a lot of the other guys were, quite frankly, again, I don't want to be disrespectful, but relatively no-name pitchers like Musgrove. You look at who's hurt in the National League. Kershaw's been dealing with injuries. Scherzer's hurt. DeGrom's hurt. I mean, some of these best pitchers over the last few years in the National League, they're all injured. So Musgrove is in prime position to win. He's already off to a great start because he has the best numbers in the National League. You listed him off. He's either first or second in ERA, quality starts, wins, etc. So he also plays on a good team, Tom. He plays on the Padres, who we said are going to get a lot of dubs. So I'm buying both of these guys as Cy Young winners, but more so Nestor Cortez. I think his rise to me, granted, looking at what he did last year, not that surprising. Joe Musgrove is probably more in that good but great category. But I think there's a lot of guys like that, like a Blake Snell, maybe like a Shane Bieber, maybe like a Trevor Bauer. Like there's some guys in baseball who are good for many years, and they have that one magical season where it all clicks and they pitch maybe better than where they would pitch otherwise. I think Musgrove is having that type of season. Again, I think his numbers will dip a little bit, but not enough to not get him that Cy Young. I think he's the early season favorite. And I mean, it's 50-50 if we're going to bet Musgrove versus the field. But if I'm even saying it's 50-50, he's obviously a legit contender for the Cy Young. Cortez, though, I will take versus the field in the American League. He's been great. Nasty Nestor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be willing to take either of these against the field, so to speak, just because, like, for different reasons. I mean, Joe Musgrove has a long track record of being, a largely, again, a good pitcher. I mean, he's got a no-hitter, if not perfect game, I believe, from last season, where he was really, really incredible. And Nestor Cortez obviously was pretty solid last year and has been off to a strong start this year. I mean, if I had to take the field, I'd say that they are currently front runners, yes. But if I had to take them or the field, I mean, pitching just is too much variance in terms of injury on that front. And then Looking at some of the peripherals, actually not bad. I mean, both of them are right around like 4.8 strikeout to walk ratio, which is pretty solid. And then, of course, I mean, their ERAs are so low that, of course, their field independent pitching is going to be a little bit higher. So I see those numbers on the ERA at least coming up. Probably at the very best, they're going to be finishing around the mid twos, which
Mid
certainly could
twos.
mid
Okay.
twos. Yeah, I don't
I
think
could see him going low twos. Obviously, I think it's gonna start with the two, but I don't know
yeah.
about mid twos. Maybe
I
like
would say I would say about
2.25.
like 2.5 and up.
Okay,
Like that's what I'm defining mid
I
twos.
think they'll both go under that.
So I think certainly in the early contention right now, we kind of know what teams are. I think we're still kind of figuring out what some individual players are. Maybe, give them a couple more starts, or I would say I would give myself a couple more starts before saying, yeah, these guys definitely look like Cy Young contenders. Just because, we've seen pitchers who have gotten off to hot starts before kind of fade as the season goes on. It'll be particularly interesting to see how Nestor fares, given that this is, I believe, like his first really full big league season.
No,
Because
last year
prior
he
year,
pitched a lot.
last year,
I
well,
pulled
last year only 93 innings pitched. He started 14
okay.
games for the Yankees, but only 93 innings pitched. I mean, that's going to be the biggest hurdle for him at
Can he
least.
sustain, right?
Can he be pitching? I know it's no longer 200 innings, but can he get to 150, 160, that type of thing? That would keep him in contention. I have no idea what New York's plans are, if they have any sort of intention of skipping starts here and there to maintain him throughout the season, what have you. So it'll be interesting to see. I think
Not.
definitely the talent for this year really, really good. I'm going to hold off on saying Cy Young, but definitely not fluke. So that wraps for the main meat of the content for the show today, which means we are moving on to our regular fan favorite programming, or maybe it's just host favorite programming. Who knows? We've got betting locks of the week. We've got sports trivia, and we've got statements and salutes as well. So, Common, let's start off with the betting locks of the week. How'd we do?
As a show, we did pretty good. I think you and Drew have done great the whole season. I've been a little up and down. Last week, you guys were down and I was up, or 2 weeks ago, rather.
Mm-hmm.
This last week, I went down to reality. So, Tom, you're killing these locks of the week. You are in the leaderboard. Last season, you and I finished tied for first. This season, you're starting to run away with it. So, Tom Castleman is killing it. 3-0 week for you, Mr. Castleman. And you were definitely very right on a couple of them. It weren't even close. You had Al Horford over 10.5 points in game one at -120. That was correct. Horford scored 26 points, made 6 threes in that game. I actually took your advice and bet that as well. So even though I didn't put it on locks of the week, I took the Castleman advice. Warriors Celtics over 212 points in game one. It was 120-108. So 228 points. Not much sweating there either, although the under hit in game two. So we'll see where game three is headed. Then you did have to sweat a lot on this one.
Yes.
Kevon Looney under 9.5 rebounds at -114. Looney had 9 rebounds. He couldn't grab one more to barbecue. This is how I know it's your ear for locks of the week. Because, Tom, the first year we did locks of the week, you were notoriously horrendous at player props.
Yep.
You are now cleaning out player props in season 2 of locks of the week. That was like a typical one that you would get barbecued on last year. You would miss it by half a point, half a rebound, whatever it may be. This year, you're hitting by half a point. So that's off to you. 3-0 week. Drew Brackett had a solid week. He was 2-1. He had this was a game that I lost a parlay on that I would have cashed in a lot of money. I'd argue that maybe I got barbecued or maybe I didn't. This was a very interesting line. So Drew had Avalanche -1.5 over the Oilers, +125 in game one. So the Avalanche were up 7-3 in this game. So Drew was in clear position to win. I had a parlay, and I'm like, this is over. I'm not going to hit squat here. And then it became 7-6, 7-6, empty net with like 15, 20 seconds to go. Avalanche score on the empty net. They barbecue me. They unbarbecue Drew. They do get the 8-6 win. So that was a crazy game to track for betting because it looked like you were shooing to win it. Then it looked like you were going to lose it. Then you won it at the end. Drew Brackett definitely sweating hard at the end there. He had Celtics covering 3.5 in game 1 against the Warriors. Boston looked to be toast after 3 quarters. I think they were down 12, but dominated in the 4th. They won by 12. So Drew was correct with Boston 3.5. He did miss a soccer over under. He had Brazil, South Korea under 2.5, 5-1 Brazil. So he missed a big on that one. 1 and 2 for me. I had Warriors minus 3.5 over the Celtics. Another game that I had a parlay on, and I couldn't catch a break. I had Horford's over, Curry's over, and the Warriors minus 3.5. After 3 quarters, I looked up. It was all hitting, but Warriors choked in the 4th, losing by that margin that I just mentioned earlier, 120-108. I did hit Curry over 27.5 at minus 115. I think he had 21 in the first quarter, ending with 34. And then I missed game 1 Lightning at the Rangers, minus 125 on the money line. Missed that one badly. 6-2 Rangers with the dub. So I'll get Drew's picks in here for this week. He sent them in via the phone. If you guys are just joining our program, Drew is another one of the hosts. He is sort of taking a little summer vacation. Hopefully we get him back for football season next week, but he is still participating in Locks of the Week. He's got a little UEFA Nations League soccer, Belgium and Poland under 2.5 goals on Wednesday, June 8th. Belgium coming off a terrible game against the Netherlands where they gave up 4 goals. So interesting to see Drew go with the under there. He's got a little UEFA 6-9, Portugal, Czech Republic, over 2.5 goals, probably doing it to annoy me, thinking Ronaldo's going to win. But don't you worry, we've got some Messi later on in the program, Tom Castleman. Finalissima, Argentina, 5 goals Messi against Estonia. Ronaldo, 4 games against Estonia in his career, Tom, 4 goals. Messi, 1 game, 5 goals. Keep that in mind. And then finally, Drew has a little tennis ATP Stuttgart Open. Oscar Ott versus Denis Shapovalov, under 22.5 games. 2 real quick things to hit on, Tom, before we get into your picks. Nadal plus 400. I told you last week or 2 weeks ago to bet on Nadal plus 400 to win the French Open. That did happen. So that is an interesting note for that. And I love Scott Van Pelt's Bad Beat segment. I saw one of the craziest things ever, and this was similar to that hockey game. I don't know if it's a bad beat or not. There was a line that was like Mississippi State plus 200 in the College Baseball World Series, and they were up 12 runs. And I think the final was they lost by 14. So it was a 26-run swing in baseball. It might have been 12 that the final was, or 14, but they were up double-digit runs, up 12, and then they lost by double digits. So there was more than a 20-run swing. You think that 20-something point fourth quarter swing was big in that Celtics-Warriors game? How about a 24-run swing, or 26 in the baseball College World Series? I saw that last night on SportsCenter, Bad Beats, and I just chuckled. Crazy.
Hate to be holding a ticket on that one, at least in one particular sense. I imagine if I had it the other way, probably would have turned off the game and had a very, very pleasant surprise the next day.
It would have been a great
so
evening.
My locks of the week, I am going to go with a role player game 3 theme here.
Of course.
So give me, because I went 3-0 on my varying props last week, I will take
Sure.
Derek White over 11.5 points. He's been over that in both games 1 and 2 on the road. And that's only minus 106 on Bovada. He had 26 points, I believe it was. Or no, he had, I think, 20 points, or give or take, in game 1. He had 12 points in game 2. So I'll go ahead and take 11.5 points at minus 106. Minimal juice at best for that. A little more juice here. Draymond Green, give me over 21.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He was at 21 in game 2, and I believe 23 in game 1. I anticipate Draymond to be really, really active in this game. He's going to play into that hate relationship that Boston is going to roll out. They're going to roll out the green carpet and absolutely hate on him. I think he's going to play into that, and he's just going to have an absolutely phenomenal game. Maybe not necessarily in one given category. I think he's just going to fill the stats a lot of different ways. And then I'm going to roll again with old man Horford, over 11.5 points. I neglected to write down what the juice was on that. I know it is within our margin. I just can't remember. I think it's somewhere around like minus 114, something like that. But those are my 3 locks. Derek White and Al Horford both over 11.5 points. Draymond Green over 21.5 points, rebounds, assists.
Yeah, so I feel good about this one at least one of my picks, because you made it. And Castleman, you're hotter than hot. I like Al Horford over 11.5 points as well.
You're jumping into the prop pool here.
I definitely am. You'll definitely see
this
that.
Might be is this your first like individual player prop?
Curry.
Oh, that's right. You have done Curry, yeah.
So I'm actually I felt good about last week's hitting, so we'll try it again. So Al Horford over 11.5. I've got it at minus 105 on DraftKings, and I saw it at minus 125 last night, and then it moved to minus 105 like overnight-ish. So maybe it was yesterday afternoon, but at some point I wrote down some lines on Monday, and it's now Tuesday, and it went from barely being within the bounds, or actually maybe it was at plus money at one point. I don't know, but it shifted, and it's minus 105 now on Al Horford. 26 points in game 1, 2 points in game 2, obviously averaging 14 a game. But he is a veteran star, and he's averaging about 12 per game in the playoffs this year. So if you go at his average, if he hits just at his average, he'll get 12, which will be just enough. I think that game 1, obviously, he played better than he's going to play. Game 2, obviously, played worse than he's going to play. But I think they'll give him some looks down low. Al Horford, a former All-Star, one of the leaders of this team. He's going to have a good game over 11.5 points. I'm going to keep rolling with this one because this has hit in each of the first 2 games. And I did hit it last week. So I'll go with Curry over 28.5 points at minus 110 on DraftKings. Steph has been over that total in both of these games, 34 and 29. By the way, I said this last week when I reasoned this out. Steph loves playing the Celtics. On March 16th this year, he only played 14 minutes versus Boston, scoring 3 points. But you look at some of his last games against Boston before that, last December, 30 points. The one before that, 47, 38 the one before. He simply owns this team. And with how cold the Warriors offense has been, we talked about this on the onset, Boston may try and let him do it. They're obviously, going to try and D-up on him, but he may not get as many doubles. And I think Steph is just focused. He's hot right now. I think he'll hit 30-plus in this game, no problem. And then finally, Warriors plus 3.5 at the Celtics in game 3. It's Tuesday night we're recording. This should be up by the time game time tips off. So hopefully you guys catch this before the game. But Warriors plus 3.5 on the road in game 3. Warriors have won at least one playoff road game in 26 straight playoff series. Celtics are only 5-4 at home in the playoffs. So I think they're going to split game 3 and 4. So there's a 50% chance the Warriors win this game, according to my reasoning. I'll take my shot. And even if they do lose, that 3.5 point spread, I think it's pretty juicy. And I think we're due for a close game. Not having had any close games in game 1 and game 2. I mean, game 1 was close most of the way, but not necessarily close on the final result. But I think we're due for a close game. And I think obviously both teams want to win, but I think they're going to be playing with that sort of like urgency because I think they both know how important game 3 is. So I think it's going to lead to the game being close. I think you never want to be down 2-1 in a series, but obviously in Boston's case, you don't want to be down 2-1 and lose the home court. Warriors want to gain the home court back. Look for a close game 3. Maybe Warriors win outright if you want to really go for plus money. But I'm going with the 3.5. Give myself a little wiggle room there.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to seeing how those pan out. Most notably Thursday night for you or Wednesday night for you and myself, Drew, of course, having a little bit more variance on that one, a little bit more varied outcomes. So moving into sports trivia, I think I've got a pretty fun one.
Me too.
So what do you want to start with me giving you the trivia question or vice versa?
Whatever you want. You can start. Why don't you start?
All right. So obviously Al Horford, pretty big story, making a little bit of NBA history in his NBA Finals debut, put up 26 points. So I think the way I'll do this is we'll do like a 3, maybe 5 questions where you can ask a couple probing questions to get the details you think you need to answer this question.
Okay.
Who has the most points scored in an NBA Finals debut? And we're going to go back as far as the NBA-ABA merger.
Okay, so
we'll do like, I don't know, it's not going to be a full game of 20 questions, but I think 5 should be pretty fair before you have to start throwing out darts there.
Okay, so do you ever have that moment where you have something on in the background and you hear it, but you don't really pay attention and you don't read it? So
is this one of your 5 questions?
Well, no, it's not. But I saw this on. Well, no, I heard it on SportsCenter. So I had SportsCenter on in the background, and they were talking about it, but I was like not really listening at the time. So they said it on SportsCenter, but I can't remember who it was. But I feel like it was like an older player, like not a current guy. Tom.
Okay.
Like I'll start throwing some names out. Tom, first off, maybe this is my question. A guy we've never seen play, at least during a live game.
No.
So it is a current guy. Or not a current guy, but a guy we would have
within our viewing lifetime, yes.
Within our viewing lifetime. Okay. Well, I'll just start. LeBron.
Not LeBron.
Okay. That was the obvious guess. Shaq.
Nope.
He's up there though, isn't he?
I don't have like the full list in front of me. I just have like the name.
Oh, Michael Jordan.
Not Michael Jordan.
Okay, so a guy we watched. Did we watch these finals?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
You maybe more than me. I'll give a little extra information on that.
Okay. All right.
Because you're slightly older than I am, so you have a little bit more viewing experience.
Okay, so we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. All right. Karl Malone.
Not Karl Malone.
Okay. Oh, Allen Iverson.
It is Allen Iverson.
And was that the Tyronn Lue game where he stepped over him and they won? Was that in overtime? I think it was like game one of the finals. I think the Sixers won
It was
the first.
game one. I don't believe it was overtime.
Sixers won game one, and then the Lakers won 4 in a row.
Yep.
Shaq dominated Dikembe Mutombo, no, who was considered by some as the best defensive big man of the time.
Yep.
And Shaq said, no one's stopping me. That's why
exactly.
when Mr. Gobert says, oh, I would stop Shaq, you wouldn't stop Shaq in your prime at all. Nobody can stop prime Shaq. Dikembe Mutombo couldn't stop him. No one would stop the Big Diesel. But hey, no one stopped Allen Iverson in game one. We were talking about Klay Thompson. Allen Iverson might be the ultimate streak shooter. That dude can miss 10 shots in a row, then he can make 8 in a row right after that.
Yeah.
He was definitely a streaky player. He definitely got hot in game one. 40-something points, Tom?
48 points, yeah. And actually, like, I pulled up a couple other names here. Michael Jordan actually had that record at 36 points 10 years prior.
Against the Lakers.
Against the Lakers, yeah. So his NBA final. So at one point,
so
yes,
the Lakers
Michael Jordan,
were both.
Yeah.
And who else is on that list?
Let's see. What I have here is Kevin Durant, I believe, is tied with Michael Jordan for points in a playoff debut. Anthony Davis put up 34.
Also against the Heat, right?
Yep.
So Lakers and Heat have been penalized.
Oh, yeah. And let's see. There's a couple other ones. I know, like, Chris Paul, I think, had like 30-something in his debut. So, yeah. Interesting kind of, we've got both, like, young star and established veteran, so takes all kinds. What trivia question do you have for me today?
So I got creative with mine. This is not one that you'll find on the internet anywhere. It was a common inspired trivia question.
Oh boy.
So I did some digging through the NBA playoff scores. It will probably come as no surprise to you that the vast majority of the playoffs all-time leading scorers either played for the Celtics or Lakers for their entire or at least parts of their career.
Sure.
So other than Michael Jordan, get this, Tom.
Okay.
This is wild. The first 12 leading scorers in playoff history, other than Michael Jordan, were all Celtics or Lakers. LeBron very briefly a Laker. The 13th playoff leading scorer in career playoff points, I'll give this one away, is Stephen Curry. So Stephen Curry recently became #1 all-time playoff scorer that did not play on the Lakers or Celtics or was not named MJ. So Steph is 13th. 14th through 17th are also former Celtics and Lakers. So literally 15 of the 17 leading playoff scorers of all time either played for the Celtics or Lakers, at least at some point in their career. LeBron, obviously, very briefly with the Lakers. But most of these guys, and a lot of them are Celtics, 50s, 60s, whatever. But most of these guys played their entire careers with said squad. So obviously, Kareem played on several teams. Larry Bird obviously played with one team. But so 14 through 17, also Celtics, Lakers guys. Numbers 18, 19, and 20. The other 3 guys in the top 20 who are not Steph Curry, not Michael Jordan, or not Lakers or Celtics guy. Can you name the 18th, 19th, and 20th leading playoff scorers of all time? This is strictly in total career playoff points, not playoff points per game.
All right.
I'll give you two. I'll give you one clue to start. Or do you not want it?
I'm going to guess first. I'll put that clue in my pocket in case I get stuck a little bit later, as I invariably will. First one that came to mind was Tim Duncan.
Number 19. Nicely done. Number 19.
I imagine they were in the playoffs a lot, so I'm going to say Karl Malone for the Utah Jazz.
So Karl Malone was technically a Laker at one point.
Oh, I
However,
forgot. Yeah, okay,
Karl
never mind
Malone, though, actually, though, Tom,
then.
is not in the top. Where is Karl Malone? Holy cow! I thought Karl Malone had more points than this in the
I mean,
playoffs.
maybe the Jazz. Like, yeah, I figure like between he and Stockton, they probably had to make it to a lot of playoffs, but maybe
Well,
not.
no, I don't see Karl Malone here near the top.
Kevin Durant. It's pretty
Not Kevin
prolific.
Durant. Kevin
Ooh,
Durant is 34. But Kevin
ooh.
Durant will get a higher on this list for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
Where's Karl Malone? Did they like
So,
forget to put him in here or something?
I
I don't see
mean,
him anywhere near the top.
given the type of person he is, I'm totally fine if he's left off the list. Let's
Carl.
see. See, now I gotta like throw out all these different names that are popping into my head, guys. Like, you need to have like kind of expanded playoffs
Mm-hmm.
with like, but not with 5 game series. Like that probably hurts.
You're gonna get one
Um,
of these guys. I think the other you will not get.
I'll tie it into my trivia question. Is Allen Iverson,
Not
perhaps?
not Allen
Ooh.
Iverson.
Let's see. No, Dwayne Wade with the Heat. Is he up
Dwayne
there?
Wade. Nicely
Nice.
done. D Wade number 20, right
Nice.
behind Tim Duncan.
Okay, so I'm
Nicely
missing
done, Tom
18.
Castleman. Nicely done.
Let's see. So 18.
This is a guy that you did never watch play. He played so long ago.
So long ago.
He actually played for an NBA, a team that used to play in this NBA city that no longer even has an NBA team. This current city does not have an NBA team.
So
He
for
was
that tells me Seattle.
not Seattle. This was one of like
Ooh.
the OG great basketball players. Like literally like right when the NBA first started existing, I feel like.
Got to go like through the memory banks of like who like the all-time great players like early on. Would it be like Bob Pettit for the St. Louis
Bob
Hawks?
Pettit for the St. Louis Hawks. Get him, Tom. Big Blue, the bombarder from Baton Rouge. Bob Pettit.
Yeah, I definitely needed the hint on that one. That's definitely a Sporkle pull right there.
Yeah. I just basketball referenced this because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do NBA Finals inspired trivia,
Sure.
and I thought I would create my own. So I did.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one because yeah, like it's just mind-boggling to think about like how long and rich a tapestry the NBA's history is, and yet like 35 something titles are tied up with 2 franchises. Basically, it's really really intriguing stuff.
It is crazy.
Awesome. So statements and salutes for the week. I'll just go ahead and kind of tie in last week to this week as I talked a little bit about Aaron Donald going on a podcast. I can't remember if it was the I Am Athlete or I Athlete podcast or something along those lines. But he was talking about how he was comfortable with the notion of retiring if he did not receive a new deal with the LA Rams. Well, he has that new deal. It is not really an extension because he had 3 years left on his current deal, but it was out of guaranteed money basically. So what the Rams went ahead and did was they said, "We're going to keep you at 3 more years remaining on this contract, and we're just going to tack on $40 million that you can just have."
Show me the money.
And Aaron Donald said, "I will see you guys at training camp." So congrats to Aaron Donald. I know like from a longevity perspective, he doesn't have as many years as say Lawrence Taylor, but certainly peak and impact every bit as up there as the great LT as far as best defensive player, or at least we should, if we want to parse it between like rushing versus coverage, certainly one of the best lineman pass rushers of all time. Just an absolute wrecking ball. As a defensive tackle, exactly, on the interior where you are going up against centers, guards. Sometimes they're bringing in tackles. You're almost always going to have a running back who's going to chip in on you, and yet he manages to dominate. out of that position. It is absolutely fantastic to watch. Highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. I believe he's the first non-quarterback to eclipse $30 million a year in average annual value on the contract. Yep. And quite frankly, he's worth it. He's earned every penny of that. I think he will continue to earn that this season. And if he should choose to continue playing, beyond this upcoming season, 2022, 2023, I think he'll still continue to earn that money, barring, of course, knock on wood, some sort of freak injury or something like that. I don't see a decline in his game over the next couple of seasons. So, salute to him. Great that he felt comfortable with a decision either way, and is quite frankly just securing more generational wealth in the process of doing something he absolutely loves.
Yeah, I had this written down too. 2 years, $60 million extension. I know that total might be a little bit different with bonuses, et cetera, but the first non-QB ever with more than 30 million a year, as you said, highest paid non-quarterback. Awesome to see the best defensive player in the game today getting paid, because he was thinking of retiring. How are you going to get him back in? Show him the money. And a lot of that is about respect. Sure. I know a lot of these, obviously everyone won't turn down money, but for those top level athletes, it's about respect. It's not so much of like, hey, I need $30 million to feed my family. It's like, if that guy's going to get 25 and I'm better than him, where's my 30? And it's interesting because the game is so dominated by offense. A defensive player, though, as good as he is, you mentioned, along with Lawrence Taylor, maybe one of the two best defensive players of all time. He has the most sacks in the league since he entered the league as a defensive tackle. This dude's going to play, at least 5 more years. He will finish, upwards of near 150 sacks for his career, which would be among the best ever. And he does it as an interior lineman. I don't think anyone else has ever had that success at that position. Warren Sapp was kind of the guy that kind of started that, but Aaron Donald is much more athletic, much more well-built than Warren Sapp. And that's saying a lot because Warren Sapp is one of the best defensive linemen of all time. So good to see Aaron Donald getting paid. I completely agree. He is absolutely worth it. I have a couple other real quick sports notes before I get into my statement. It's sort of like a sports recap, sort of a salute, sort of a shout out. I know I hinted at this one earlier, but salute to Rafa Nadal for winning the French Open. Took down Djokovic. I had said that plus 190 last week. I couldn't put it on locks of the week because it was literally going on as we were on the air. I lost my mind. Tom, I told you a couple weeks ago to bet your mortgage on Nadal at plus 400 to win the French Open. You didn't bet your mortgage and you lost that time, Tom. You could have gotten a second house with the plus 400. Second house, baby. But nonetheless, epic win over Djokovic in the quarters. I know I talked about this ad nauseum a couple weeks ago and last week. The way the seeding was done wasn't great, but also got a bagel in the third set in the final. 6-3, 6-3, 6-0 against Casper Ruud. I think it was 6-3 the first 2 games. Now 22 majors for Rafa, 20 for Djokovic and Federer. So big-time accomplishment for him. The next closest guy on the majors total is Pete Sampras with 14. Nadal was 14 alone at the French Open. So hats off to Rafa. I also had Aaron Donald written down. You hit on that. And just a couple other real quick sports notes. We'll probably talk about this one next week because we do have the U.S. Open the following weekend. Not this weekend, the following weekend. Tiger Woods is withdrawing from the U.S. Open, saying that he needs to focus on his health, needs more rest on his body. And it shows because he played some good golf early on in some of these tournaments. But by Saturday, he was just simply done so far in every tournament he's played. So probably a good call for Tiger. And then I have this written down, College World Series. The baseball College World Series has been wild. They're getting into the finalists there. That tournament is moving on along. But the women's softball, they're in the final. I think it's Texas and Oklahoma. Good old Big 12 rivalry. That is starting tonight. So definitely look forward to that. I do have a statement. I'm going to take a breather here, though. Wanted to ask you if you have anything else to add on any of those sports notes before I go on one of my typical common rants.
If I had bet the outstanding balance of my mortgage, I would be a literal millionaire, pre-tax, of course.
There you go. That's
I don't know.
awesome.
I don't know. Well, no, if books are taken, what is that, like Mattress Pete, Mattress whoever, the mattress guy?
That's a lot.
Yeah. If they're taking his wagers, I'm sure, a couple hundred G notes on Rafa to win on the clay. I don't think that would have gone over well with my wife or financial advisor, but
No. But it would have paid off.
I would have been able to say I have $1 million or so ticket in my hand.
That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So we'll see. We will see. My statement of the week is, here we go. We're going to talk about my guy, Messi. How could I not talk about what Messi did over the last week? Here is the statement, Tom. It might be controversial, but I believe it to be true because health matters. When healthy and in the right situation, at 34, about to be 35 years old, just 1 year removed from winning the last Ballon d'Or, just 1 year removed from winning the Copa America, Lionel Andres Messi is still the best soccer player in the world. And it showed. It showed this last week with Argentina. Finalissima, Argentina, Italy, champion of South America against champion of Europe. Messi did circles around the defense. He was dribbling like he was 20. He was stealing balls. He was assisting balls. He could have had like 3 goals, but he just missed or they were saved. He saved the goals for the next game. I'll get to that in a second. But 2 assists for Messi. He got a 9 on some rating systems. Some gave him a perfect 10 in the big win over Italy. Then he got some 10s for his next game. Yes, it was Estonia, but he had 5 goals against Estonia. 5. Cristiano Ronaldo in 4 matches against Estonia has 4 career goals. That game ended 5 Argentina, 0 Estonia. All the goals scored by Messi. He is something else, man. He became the first player in soccer history, Tom, with 5 goals in a match for a club team and 5 goals in a match for an international team. So soccer's been around forever. No athlete ever has been able to get to 5 club goals and 5 senior international goals in a game. He did it against Bayer Leverkusen years ago. I think it was 2012. Don't quote me on that in the Champions League, but it was wild. And people will talk about, look, Messi didn't score as many goals for PSG his first year. It's true. He didn't score as many goals. You know what? He had 14 assists. That was among the top 3 or 4 in the world across all the major leagues. They have a softer scoring system, Tom, where they rank you based on your passing, your assisting, your goals. Like Messi has been the top-rated player like almost pretty much every year over the last 15 years. Despite everyone hating on him and him not getting as many goals, he was still statistically rated the 3rd best player in the world. And that was despite going into a horrible situation. He just came off winning that South American tournament trophy. He was getting rested early on in the season. He had that debacle where he was going to come back to Barcelona. They didn't have enough money to bring him back. Last minute, he goes to PSG. He misses basically the first month of the season, comes into a new team in a new city. And, it takes everyone a second to get adjusted. Just like when he's starting to get adjusted, he gets COVID. He had COVID. He was out for like 6 weeks, and he says that he rushed it too early. He said that for about the next month or 2, he could barely breathe. The dude was barely able to run. In soccer, you got to run.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know it sounds like you're making excuses for him, but he's in a new team and a new system. He's coming off an injury, then he gets COVID. Like, and you wonder where his production was. He hit the post 11 times, Tom. You talk about him getting 11 total goals this season, which is like the lowest he's had since his first season. He hit the post 11 times. 22 goals would have been one of the best goal tallies in the world. He also had like 4 goals called off due to offsides. Like, it was a matter of inches. Soccer is also a game of luck. The ball didn't bounce Messi's way this year, and he was still rated the 3rd best player in the world, according to the rating system. That is despite the team focusing on Mbappe, which is another debate for another day. Let Messi get up there near the front. Let Messi score the ball. How many times was Messi open where Mbappe shot the ball instead of passing to a wide open Messi? I can tell you from having watched every PSG game, that happened like 3-4 times a game. So Messi is too unselfish. He's too good at passing. He's okay with having Mbappe get the glory. But soccer isn't just about goals. Even though Messi has the most goals and assist contributions in soccer history, by the way, first athlete with 1,100 total goals and assists. He is still the best player in the game. You cannot have watched the Italy or Estonia game and said that that is not the best player in the world. He might have struggled a little bit at PSG, and by struggled, again, 3rd best player in the world.
Sure.
But he is clearly the best. It shows when he plays for Argentina, when it's built to be his system. And I think it's going to show at the World Cup this November and December in Qatar. Leo Messi, best player in the world, going to finally win that coveted World Cup trophy. 2022 year of Messi.
Hopefully it'll be cool enough that they can actually play, given how hot it gets in that part of the world.
Well, and that's why
definitely.
it's in November and December, because soccer World Cup has always been in the summer. So, Tom, you are correct.
Mm-hmm.
That will be one of the hottest, if not the hottest, World Cup on record. It'll still be in the 90s in November, December. I'm sure they'll take a lot of cooling breaks. The good news is that all of the games are being played within a 30-mile radius of each other. So there won't be much flying. I think it'll be pretty much busing to games. So hopefully that will keep the players in better physical shape. But yeah, if they played in Qatar in the summer, it would be over 100 degrees in an average day. Not like a hot day. Like a hot day, you might get up to 115.
Yeah.
So thankfully, that is why the World Cup is in November and December this year instead of the typical June, July range area. So definitely looking forward to that. But, you know, a lot of good sports going on right now, and it is definitely exciting to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, one quick thing that actually broke within like the last hour, give or take. It's not a good note to end on. But the story that seems to never end. Deshaun Watson, according to a report, met with at least 66 women for massages in 17 months, and that the Texans may have provided him with the NDAs that he supplied to his masseuses after a time. So,
of course they did. Of course they did.
So that's something that. If any sort of big news breaks on that front, we'll address it in the next show. But as of right now, certainly not a good look for a player who at one time was kind of a darling in the NFL, and through his choices, his actions, has fallen very, very far from grace in a number of ways.
Yeah, 66. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, there's one thing where you can say that one person misconstrued something. 66.
So it's so to clarify, there's 24 still. Well, there's 24 lawsuits, but there's a report that he's met with as many as 66 women for massages over about a year and a half. So there could be more people that either aren't moving forward with things, or maybe nothing happened with some of them. But definitely not a great look, especially when you throw in the aspect that the Houston Texans, one of their security people providing an MBA, reportedly again, providing an NDA for him to use. And I think that actually goes against the literal testimony that either he or the Texans gave about their level of knowledge or involvement. So there could be perjury involved in this as well. So an unfortunate way. I much rather would have ended with Messi, but I felt we should probably bring that up as like a tail end topic to the show.
I mean, I know the Browns want to win, but like all that money they gave them, like it's not like it's even like a thing where, you know, obviously, like I don't condone anything Kareem Hunt did. I don't know all the details, but Kareem Hunt had that incident where they gave him a chance after he hit a female. Like that's, I mean, you could argue that's an unexcusable mistake. Maybe people in other jobs wouldn't get a second chance. Mm-hmm. But as far as what we've seen, that was like a one-time thing. And again, there could be more, but at least the evidence supports that Kareem Hunt had a one-time thing where he really made a horrendous mistake. But it was one time. Like Deshaun Watson clearly thought somewhere in his deranged head that what he was doing was okay. Like he did this 20 whatever many times, however many women have come forward, many more might come. I mean, like it's one thing when it's like 2 or 3 people, but when there's so many people coming forward, like there's obviously he overstepped the bounds. Like what can be prosecuted, what can't be. I know that's a tricky situation in its own. Maybe that's why he's still like he's going to play. Maybe we'll see. I know the Browns think he will, but the more and more comes out in this story that those things like appeals, whatever, like I'm not an expert of the legal system, but there's also the public opinion, but they gave him guaranteed money. Like what happens if like, I don't even know how that's all going to work, but the fact that the Browns, not only that they even gave him a chance, that they gave him one of the highest paid contracts and guaranteed money of all time, that just rubs me wrong. And I can't, in my right mind, cheer for the Cleveland Browns organization. No. It just makes me sick to my stomach. And I know there's other teams that maybe would have done this too, but it's just a really bad look for Cleveland. I think it's horrible. It's a bad look for the Texans. It's a bad look for the Browns. It's a bad look for Deshaun Watson. A sad situation all around.
Yeah, no, as far as I understand for the legal proceedings, there are no criminal charges. A grand jury in Texas declined to move forward, or maybe it was not the grand jury. It was after a grand jury, the district attorney, that's the term I'm looking for. District attorney declined to press forward with criminal charges. So all the current lawsuits are all civil suits, which is just money. There's no jail time involved. So we're going to have civil suits. And then, of course, the NFL has its personal conduct policy, which still they have not ruled one way or another on how they're going to address Deshaun Watson. Last year, he was put on paid leave. So he wasn't officially on the commissioner's exempt list. So there was nothing for him to appeal. So we'll keep an eye on this. This is something that's going to continue to develop over the summer. And we'll keep an eye on if anything breaks. But obviously, not a fun sports topic to talk about. I'd rather talk about many other things. So
Messi. I'll end it on this.
We'll end with Messi. Yeah, Argentina.
I won't add any more stats. Argentina. Vamos. I'm trying to get my dog to the World Cup. They've yet to lose a match since he was born. They have the longest unbeaten streak in the world right now. They're within, I think, 5 or 6 games for breaking the all-time record. So a bunch of ties in there, but no losses. So if you guys are watching, keep sending messages to the Argentine Soccer Federation, as I did on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and let them send me and my dog to the World Cup, put us up in a 5-star hotel, put us on first class, get us tickets to every game, front and center. Let us sit on the freaking team bench, because if that happens, Argentina will win the World Cup. I guarantee it, as Chuck would say, Charles Barkley. Also,
I'll put that on my call sheet after I talk with the various commissioners about all the rules changes I have.
I love it.
I'll slot that in.
One more thing to say. the match golf tournament. It was Rodgers and Brady against Mahomes and Josh Allen. Josh Allen has some major work to do on his golf game. Not a great performance from Josh Allen. That is all I will say on that front. But that'll do it for Salute Your Sports. We'll be back next week. We will probably still be talking about who's going to win the NBA Finals.
Yeah, we'll have a couple more games under our belt.
But depending on results, who knows what will happen. I think it's Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So Sunday would be game 5. And I think it's Thursday, Sunday for game 6 and 7.
We've got Wednesday game 3, and then June 10th, which is a Friday game 4, and then Monday the 13th is going to be game 5. Yeah,
game 5. Okay,
because they'll be at that point they'll be coming back to California, so they'll give a couple extra days.
So unless someone wins the next 4.
Unless it's like a little literal sweep through the next 3 games, we will have more NBA Finals to preview. And if somebody does sweep, that'll definitely be a major topic of discussion as well.
All right, looking forward to getting to that, Tom. Thank you very much for co-hosting this great show. And,
always.
Thank you to all the listeners, viewers, etc., guys. We'll be back next week for our weekly podcast, Salute Your Sports. Most fun podcast out there. I'm so biased on it, but I love it. See you guys then.